This is Coda Radio, episode 230 for November 7th, 2016. Everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode's brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and hopefully prepared to rescue me from my trip next week, why yes, it's our host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello, Mike!
Salam and good evening, Mr. Fisher.
It is a somber day, let's be honest. There is an apocalypse coming tomorrow, and we're just all like, the internet is in a vacuum right now. Nothing all that interesting tech news-wise is happening today because tomorrow is the U.S. election, and only somebody like Samsung would be crazy enough to make a big announcement today. Have you noticed that? Everybody else is shutting up. Except for Ballmer. Ballmer opened up his mouth. We'll talk about that, too.
Dude, Ballmer's got a lot in his mind.
Oh, yeah. He has some things to share and some history to revision, and we'll get to that. Actually, we managed to put together a good amount of content thanks to some great feedback we got from our audience about last week's episode. So are you in like a go position? Do you have a beverage? Do you have like everything you need?
I do. And, you know, like my distant cousin from a different mother, Jon Snow, I believe that winter is coming.
I thought you were going to say Barack Obama for some reason. I don't know why, but I just...
No, I'm actually from Nigeria, not Kenya.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. The money.
That did not feel good.
You know what? We're going to miss it. So you might as well get it out now. We're going to miss it. It's all changing.
I am enjoying a Samuel Adams winter lager today. It is both warm and festive, according to the redesigned label.
Do you suppose the IRS would get us in trouble if I started buying beer and called it a business expense? Because I feel like it's inappropriate that I am doing Coda Radio with you with a glass of water. I mean... Mistakes have been made, Mr. Dominic.
Would that not be a legitimate business expense, actually?
I don't know. I'm asking you. I mean, you're the guy that's super paranoid about the IRS, so I'm bouncing that your way and then seeing
First of all, I literally got a letter from them today, so it's not paranoid if they're out to get you.
Okay, fair enough. You are, jeez, man, they got the word. You're like Donald Trump when it comes to the IRS, constantly under audit.
Yeah, except I pay taxes, but they're like, yeah, that's not enough, bro.
Yeah, we want more. Yeah. Boy, that's the thing you don't really ever understand until you start your own business. I loved, we got a couple of links from the audience about the MacBook Pro or the MacBook Dongle Edition or the MacBook 16 gig, whatever you want to call it. We got a lot of feedback from all the different sides. And I didn't even realize this, but somebody passed along, there is a hack to actually get 32 gigabytes of RAM in the new MacBook Pro, and this kind of changes, I think, the entire discussion.
It's super clever, too.
Yeah, and I'm surprised we didn't mention it in the show last week. You just buy two of them for $5,198. Yeah, I love that. What's the big deal? You just buy two of them with 16 gigs of RAM. That seems like that is the perfect Apple fix, isn't it? Just buy two of them.
They're like, that's exactly what you should do.
And then, of course, you've probably seen this because, like I said, there's not much happening on the internet today. There is, however, I'm going to mute this before it goes crazy. There is, however, a Nyan Cat now for the touch bar. Somebody's developed a full-on Nyan Cat, little Pop-Tart flying cat that goes across the touch bar with a rainbow behind its butt. It's just, this is the peak of, this is what we're doing right now. This is what we're doing right now, Mike.
It's almost as if no one wants to go up against the election. It's weird, right?
This is what we're doing.
People are like intentionally avoiding doing things.
Also, a fart app has been created for the touch bar. I don't know if you've seen that. So
I'm surprised one didn't already exist.
This is entering full-on gimmick territory. It's not a disaster yet, but it is entering full-on gimmick territory. So I wonder if we're going to see this thing develop into an actual useful tool or not. And how useful is it if it's not across the entire Mac line, right? I mean, how useful is it? I mean, how likely are you to support it as a developer if it's only on a couple of models of laptops? It doesn't seem like a very long-term.
It doesn't seem very long-term.
And what about a keyboard? What about a desktop keyboard with touch bar? Are they going to do that?
Well, I feel like, that's going to happen, right?
You think so? You think? I mean, they're not making a display, so why would they make a keyboard? It's a bad
grizzly.
It's a bad situation over there. I think it's crazy they stopped making a display. But offensively bad wrote in on the subreddit and passed along. There is a way to get a touch bar on your Mac right now, or actually on an iPad. You don't have to have one of the new MacBook Pros. There is a demo you can run, and he actually got it running on his iPad, the touch bar, and then he propped his iPad above his keyboard to just test out the functionality of it to see, like, would this be something I want to buy and upgrade to? And that was kind of clever. So he's running the simulator on his iPad Mini or whatever it is, mounted at the top of his Bluetooth keyboard, and he says so far it's been pretty useless for his workflow. I'm going to give it a try for a full week to see if I can uncover any helpful features. But that is, I knew you could run it in a simulator, but that's a clever way to actually test its usefulness. Plus, what else are you using your iPad for? I mean, let's be honest. Just said it there. You're not using it for anything. I actually
YouTube videos.
And kids apps. Boy, that's great for kids apps. So I thought that was all actually kind of some pretty good follow-up. You know, I've tried to take it all in, all the things that people have suggested and written in, and there is a bit of it. So last week I got into a little bit of the workflow aspect of it, and I reflected on it a bit more, and I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang tight with my 2013 MacBook Pro for a while. Because it's working enough for me right now, and it dual boots Arch Linux really well. It's just working like a champ. And I can boot into macOS, and I upgraded to Sierra, and here's what I said, too, as I said, I'm going to do the Sierra update, and if this just totally borks my Linux install on this, then this isn't a viable tool, because I can't get in the position where I'm essentially treating it like a Hackintosh, and I'm not upgrading major OS releases. That's just not sustainable for a real tool, especially because Final Cut is constantly depending on the latest OS, like every Apple tool. So I did the Sierra update after last week's show on my 2013 MacBook Pro Retina. And it's not a bad machine. It's got a terabyte SSD in it. It's got some crappy graphics from years ago, but it's got a Core i7, I think 2.7, maybe 2.2 gigahertz. I can't remember, but it turbo boosts up pretty high. It's got 16 gigs of RAM, and it's running Linux now. I did the Sierra update, and nothing changed. Like, it's still by default when I hit the power button boots into Arch Linux. It didn't even change the boot order of the OSs or anything. It left my Linux install completely untouched. And so my solution right now is I'm just going to hang tight with this thing, even though I am legitimately, whenever I'm editing out of the studio with it, I am down to like 1 or 2 gigabytes free on the hard drive constantly. I have probably deleted more precious footage in the last 2 years than I ever thought I would in my lifetime, just trying to manage the storage on this little laptop. So a 2 terabyte model would be really appealing, but I'm making it work so far. But I came to a place, Mike, is I spent more time with some of the other tools that are available on Linux. And my position now is I spend all day on Linux. I'm going to work on Linux, but when it comes time to edit video, I'm just going to boot in the Mac, and I'm just going to use the Mac tools I'm going to keep using it and just hope that they update these laptops in 2017, maybe like around WWDC or in November again, with something that goes up to 32 gigs of RAM. Because if I'm going to upgrade my MacBook Pro, I'm going to get something with more RAM. I checked it yesterday. And I was using 12.8 gigs of RAM before I launched Final Cut. And I've seen a lot of bullshit articles on Medium and on Reddit and on Twitter that people are like, well, I launched 55 applications with 2 VMs and a Photoshop file that's 32 megapixels, and I'm only using 12 gigs of RAM, so I can't imagine why a professional would ever need more than 16 gigs of RAM. Completely unaware, completely ignorant to the way that OS X's memory management subsystem actually works, and it scales based on how much available RAM you have. And so when you have more RAM, it gives applications more RAM to use. That's how a memory management system works. But the internet is full of all of these Apple apologists right now that are apologizing and defending the fact that they put Skylake CPUs in this thing instead of Kaby Lake, and they're stuck at 16 gigs of RAM. And and the fact that the USB-C dongles are a dumpster fire right now. I don't know if you've seen some of the reviews where people are hooking up
I've seen some of the like multi-daisy chained USB dongle reviews, right? Where it's like,
and there's some there when you hook up a capture card, Wi-Fi shuts down and things like this. So
it's weird though. I mean, I haven't seen a ton of apologists. I've
really? I think like people are sending me stuff like to respond to my.
Maybe it's like individuals responding to you, like The Verge's review by I forgot his last name, but Vlad, the Mac guy there. was not at all glowing, right? It was actually pretty, he makes the point that this would be awesome if it was called the MacBook Air, which is super true. It would be an awesome MacBook Air. It's a terrible MacBook Pro rather. I'm going to kind of take it back. So the more iOS dev Apple podcasts I listen to have been much more forgiving than I think the traditional, like, old school Mac audience has been. And I think that's where you're starting to see a separation between people who came into the Apple ecosystem as iOS developers, right? Versus people who are like longtime Mac people. Because one of the things that was really interesting about like the original Macs is that they were extensible, right? You could put cards in them. You could upgrade them. You could build dongles, God forbid.
They had huge SCSI ports built in.
Right.
Yeah, and I also think here's why, because I didn't actually want to talk about this a lot, but we are leading to something else besides the MacBooks. But I think what I've kind of found offensive is I've been told for a week straight now that, well, my use case is an edge case. You're just an edge case, Chris.
Okay, but if you add up enough edge cases, you get a pretty significant part of the market. And I would add that like the whole pro market is itself an edge case. So I get where they're going with that argument. I really don't like it. Right?
Me too. Exactly.
I think it's very dismissive of first of all, it's the pro market, particularly the pro art, design and development market that basically saved Apple. And there is an element of Apple kind of trading up to the consumer market, right? To saying, listen, and maybe in a year we'll all be USB-C everywhere, and it'll be so funny about how we were all mad. But that doesn't make that processor a Kaby Lake, right? That makes it still a Skylake processor. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make the maximum RAM not bad,
or the GPU not slow,
or the GPU non-existent. It doesn't make the the keyboard's still crap, right? In the touch bar, maybe the touch bar will be cool, but I don't know that is an appropriate feature for a pro product.
Yeah, that's interesting too.
And that is the one where I feel the weakest on, right? Like I could be proven wrong.
Yeah,
on the touch bar.
Yeah. Here's where I feel like this is going. I first of all have once again realized that a tool that I depend on is being taken from me, or actually what it is that the tool isn't being taken so much as slowly modified to fit a market that I actually thought I was in, but now I'm realizing maybe I'm not. And I thought I was kind of, when it came to like hardware, software, gear, kind of the prosumer category, because I don't make enough money to go like really expensive gear, but the really basic stuff that's all auto and point and shoot isn't good enough. Like, I thought, okay, I don't know where I fit in, but now I'm thinking what Apple wants is like those vloggers that are editing video in the coffee shop. And I'm not trying to be derogatory. I think there is a certain mass market that they might be shooting for, and I just think they're perhaps backing away from the actual professional market. And it's ironic somebody who uses Linux in all aspects, but still prefers that still thinks this is the best tool. I'm stuck here. And that's what gets me, is I don't like being minimized and told it's an edge case, because it's a tool and a platform that's being adapted and taken away from me. I digress. I continue to think a Hackintosh will be perhaps the way to go, but we'll get to that. Let's move on, because I want to get to what this is really leading to, this whole conversation, and that is your new machine and the fact that you bought a new machine before the MacBook event. And although I think you've had some speed bumps, I think you made the right call. So let's talk about the problems you ran into. First, though, I want to thank our first sponsor, and that's DigitalOcean. In fact, you can go over there and use our promo code CODERDigital. You get a $10 credit, and you'll also let them know that you heard about it right here on the show, which keeps us going. It supports the show. Now, DigitalOcean has droplets. These are machines that you can spin up in less than 55 seconds, and they start at $5 a month if you want to do a monthly plan or hourly pricing. This is sweet. If you're testing a build, experimenting with a project, hourly pricing is so cool. And they have so many great systems with really incredible high-end, like over 200 gigs of RAM, like high-end systems, or tiny systems, 512 megabytes of RAM, a single CPU, and all of these rigs use SSD storage. And if you use our promo code, you get that $10 credit. You can use it any way you want. And if you need your system to expand, they make it easy to do that. They have block storage you can attach. Their UI is simple, even if you've never managed a server before. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they did all of this. But they finally brought each individual piece together. And they have data centers all over the world, in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Germany, and India. And they have an API behind all of this you can use, and you never have to go to the website. It's a really nice, well-documented API with tons of good code already written you could use for reference or just take advantage of. DigitalOcean.com. And use our promo code CoderDigital. One word, just smush it all together, apply it to your account. DigitalOcean.com, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Right before we jump into what happened to you this week on the new rig, I thought maybe I would quickly plug meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting. Oh! I'm going to be in California this weekend, and if you're in the Oakland or Berkeley area and would like to eat some of the country's best dumplings, well, actually, they serve all kinds of Chinese food, but they're well known for their dumplings, I'm told. Go to meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting or find the direct link in our show notes and sign up. Maybe we'll grab a little lunch on Sunday at 12. You can also tweet me at ChrisLIS if you're in the area. And let's say hi. Meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting this weekend as we record. It'll be November 13th, 2016, if you're listening in the future. All right. I my heart sank a little bit when I saw this tweet. Mr. Dominic tweets me, I just had a kernel panic on my beloved Ratel. So not the new rig, but the older rig.
No, the Ratel Pro was... Yeah.
So you're sitting there plugging away working, or what was were you browsing the web? What are you doing?
I hit something in the audio driver.
Oh, really?
I plugged in a new audio device. I was listening to music via YouTube Red plug.
Oh my God, I was going to make a joke about Katy Perry music videos on YouTube when you tweeted me that. And
it was actually Tiffany Albert. But
okay, I can't believe I was close though. I was going to be derogatory. I was going to be like, haha, that's what you get for watching so much YouTube. Your computer's revolting.
Well, I plugged in an audio device and it just freaked out and crashed.
Wow.
So you get the thing, you turn on, it's like your
plug
computer.
And crash.
Yeah. And it turns out there is some weird interplay you can occasionally get if you're plugging in a new audio device and Chrome is like streaming audio.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much.
It seems like it's a Chrome issue, not a system 76
Yeah, it's too bad
issue.
it would. Oh yeah, but it was too bad it would take down the whole system though.
Well, it's weird that it's not like isolated. Like at the very least, Chrome should have crashed, or maybe even just the tab.
This is fascinating. I wonder if.
Yeah.
I mean, so why? Here's in my view, the way this should have worked is if anything, maybe Pulse Audio could have crashed, unless Chrome is trying to talk to the audio hardware directly. I wonder if they're trying to do some sort of funky bypass magic.
I know Chrome does weird stuff on Mac that can like hose your system.
Bypass the pulse.
Yeah, I'm sure that Chrome does that, right? But yes, it was not Katy Perry. It was Tiffany Albert.
Was that your first kernel panic?
Yes, on the Ratel. Yes.
Wait, are you implying that the Lemur is crashing?
The Lemur has crashed.
Really?
Yes.
And this is all Ubuntu 16.04?
Well, it's 04 on the Ratel and 10 on the I call it the Lemur, but apparently it's Lemur.
Lemur.
Lemur, yes, Lemur.
Actually, I think it is Lemur, but yeah.
These are the same kind of crashes you would sometimes get on Mac, right? You're changing from clamshell mode to non-clamshell mode, and the screen freaks out, and it crashes. Yeah. Anything with audio or video seems a little risky. I have been using the Lemur more in laptop mode recently, and it is not holding up nearly as well in laptop mode as clamshell mode.
What do you mean holding up? Like battery-wise?
Well, battery-wise for sure, but also it's just very loud.
You're telling me it runs better when you're running it with the screen closed?
Yes.
How does that compute, Mr. Dominic? Well, it seems like it'd be running hotter with the screen closed.
So I have a theory. That it's not running better. That because it is on the other side of a desk, away from me, I don't hear the fan, right? I don't feel the heat. When it's on my lap in laptop mode, I hear the fan, and the fan's pretty loud. It's not horrible, but it's definitely noticeable particularly in RubyMine. I noticed like running any kind of like rake operation, I could definitely feel that baby crank up.
This is a tough one because I think in one way, especially later model MacBooks, they might have the one of the more quieter cooling systems, but the other, they're also doing more thermal throttling too. So it's kind of a win-lose.
Well, it's a question of like how obnoxious is this fan noise versus do you want to downclock, right? And I'm running an i7, so it's extra hot. It's been interesting. I'm still pretty happy with the Lemur, but I definitely would say that it does not have a great showing in laptop mode without a mouse.
So I don't understand what you mean by that. But you mean like the trackpad and the battery life are bad? What do you mean when you say it doesn't have a good showing?
Yeah,
like,
I'm trying to
or
think.
do you just mean like the experiencing of using it is underwhelming you?
Well, let me go into a white room with a black turtleneck real fast.
And maybe have a slight accent. I don't know.
What you are, God?
Oh, no, God. Oh, geez. Let's not do the accent. Let's not.
Let's leave the accent at the door.
Yikes.
Yeah. Overall experience in laptop mode is pretty rough, kind of on the couch. The trackpad, not on a surface, is basically not super usable. Again, I find Macs not super usable either, not on a desk. So this is, not that bad. But one thing I did notice was the fan noise. I mean, that was really, really starting to get to me. And I don't, I'm kind of two minds to it. Like you, I don't want thermal downclocking all the time, right?
And you wanted an i7 too.
And I wanted an i7, but I don't think launching RubyMine ought to like crank up the fan like that. And it's a little weird.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that my MacBook 2013, it runs the fans more and louder under Linux than it does under the Mac. But I always attribute that to the thermals are so much different, and Apple has so many drivers that they don't release that. I don't really know but I do notice it runs hotter under Linux. That is for sure. Now I have other systems like my Apollo, which is Skylake. It doesn't tend to get loud that often. Unless I really push it.
Well, to be totally unfair to the Lemur, like the Raytail's silent, which it's a desktop and it has lots of room for like natural cooling and all that.
And
a
larger CPU cooling fan, which makes a
big difference in terms of noise. But I would say, in terms of if I had to pick only one System 76 Linux computer, I would probably keep the Raytail.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, just because I'm recording, the machine sound is a really, really big deal. And I was having issues with it just yesterday. I don't like the sound of computer fans when I'm recording, and I have so many computers in here, it's still a bit of an issue.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, having said that, would I be willing to pay double for the equivalent MacBook? No, right? I mean,
I wonder if that's the question. Like, if this is a work tool, like we mentioned last week, I think it was, you could buy 2 of these a year for the cost of a MacBook, or more actually. And so you could in theory buy every iteration of the System 76, every small upgrade they do and tweak, and still be, if you say, I say you buy a new Mac every couple of years.
Right.
Or every year in some cases. I don't know. There is some trade-offs, and I wonder if we have all sort of collectively been convinced to fall harder on the side of thin, light, and quiet, and if it isn't worth...
Well, I will say, though, that if I was more of a traditional laptop user and I didn't run my machines in clamshell mode, the trackpad, the first couple of days it was fine, the first week it was fine, but now, sitting on the couch with the missus and having the baby crawling around, it's like, okay, I need to be able to do things fast, and having a trackpad that doesn't feel accurate is pretty annoying.
Like, this is the stock install, right?
Yeah, this is the stock install.
Okay.
The fan noise I honestly I can put up with, right? I've got the TV going, I've got music on, and it's really weird. It comes on and it comes off because it's obviously hitting some sort of thermal metric running and turning off.
And using Chrome probably, right? Because that's what seems to turn my fan on.
I'm always in Chrome, and I'm always got something streaming. And every JetBrains IDE is basically a big bag of Java, so it's probably using a ton of memory, right? So there's reasons that like it could get hot that makes sense. But the fact that I just can't like effectively use this laptop on my lap on the other side of the couch for my wife means that I can't use it as a laptop without like a table or a tray or something. So that is frustrating, and that is a function of the trackpad.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure, remember System 76 is not a sponsor of this show. I am not sure how they would resolve that, considering that they just repackage, other people's hardware, right?
Yeah, there is, as you probably know, there is very much a software component to make a good trackpad.
Yeah,
and there is tweaks they can make there because they have a System 76 driver, which I assume would be installed on your system.
It is pre-installed. I mean, there's some things you can tweak.
I would imagine they've probably pushed it as far as they can. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with Lenovo current laptops, but there is not a lot of laptops out there that have good trackpads. I actually kind of like the touch point things, whatever the little nipples are.
The old little red nipples.
Yeah, because they're quick and accurate.
Yeah, they're accurate. I mean, I whipped out my wife's Dell XPS just to try the trackpad there, and it's not much better. So I'm still willing to say that the System 76 Lemur is within the band of crappy non-Apple trackpads.
Yeah, that new MacBook has a much bigger trackpad.
See, does that help?
I think it might.
See, I'm not sure that it's size. It's like read accuracy and scrolling accuracy.
Oh, sure, yeah. But I do feel like the most PC laptop trackpads are still too small. But yeah, you're right. There is. I don't really have an accuracy issue with the Bonobo that I have here. I just still don't prefer the trackpad much to a regular mouse. But I don't.
If I whip out a tray or if I whip out a little table, and I whip out a mouse, it's totally fine, right? I don't know what that is. I don't know if you could hear it through the mic.
I heard something. It sounded like maybe
the Raptors, the System 76 Raptors, are about to rip down the door.
The drones they sent in.
The drones. You want accuracy? Here's some accuracy.
Wouldn't it be? See, here's the huge advantage that Apple has by having stores where you could go. Because if you went into a System 76 store and you could try out all of their laptops and you discovered that one of the other models had a better trackpad, you just don't know. And keyboard and trackpad are kind of big items, and
they're huge. And I almost hate knocking them for the trackpad because, my good trackpad may not be your good trackpad, right? Like the guy next to me who's literally asleep listening to the show right now loves the MacBook One keyboard, the stupid little
the one
MacBook.
with no travel.
Yeah, I hate it. So I'm totally willing to say that this is a preference thing, and I'm kind of a mouse click keyboard kind of guy.
There is a Unity. The desktop has a HUD feature where you can use the keyboard to navigate around most of the screen.
Ooh.
It might be worth looking into. You might want to dig around and look at Unity HUD, because you can use the keyboard to probably do some of the things you might want to accomplish with the mouse. It's kind of nice. It's one of the nicer things that people don't really talk about on the Unity desktop.
I will try that.
So I also would just wonder this is a waste of time, most likely, but you could always try another live environment and see if you feel like the mouse works differently. And the reason why it's not totally crazy is, say you went with something like Antigros, you would be getting a slightly newer kernel, possibly, although 1610 is pretty freaking current, which would have a different driver. And you would be using a different desktop environment, which would be communicating with that driver differently. And there are sometimes differences there.
Unity is the one true desktop environment.
Yeah, and if that's what you're comfortable, it's not really worth the effort.
Well, one thing you have to keep in mind, right? For work purposes, this laptop is great, and and I've gotten a couple things on Twitter from people. Oh, just install this beta of this version of something, and I'm like, no, because I went with Ubuntu Unity, not because I think Unity is particularly good. I think it's fine, but it's super supported and super stable, right? Which is a very boring reason and very pragmatic reason to pick a desktop environment. But
unless you want to use it as a work tool.
Well, that's what it is, right? It is. I mean, I live in Android Studio and RubyMine, so
I guess one thing that might be worth trying. I hate it when people recommend this, so don't do it. Don't do what I'm about to say. But it might be interesting if you booted into an Elementary OS live environment and just saw what it was. Just because then you're still on an Ubuntu core system.
I'm sorry, you mean Mac OS 14?
People give it a hard time, but it's kind of like, well, some of the design things that they have implemented are probably just a good way of doing it. Like the thing they get the most hard time for is their system center, like their system control panel. But it's also, there's something to be said to have something simple enough that I can look at it for 5 seconds and understand how to use the entire interface. I mean, there's just something to be said for that.
I'm in Unity right now. I would say that the Unity control panel is pretty relatively simple, right? I mean,
yeah. So I don't know. If the thing is legitimately, okay, I'll tell you a couple of things that are nicer. The way the windows render on the screen look nicer. The applications look more consistent. The application launcher is a little different, but kind of cleaner. A little less tacky, I think. And the notifications are way better than Unity notifications. They're so much better than I hate the Unity desktop notifications. It's one of the most criminal offenses of the Unity desktop is they haven't fixed those in the last 35 years they've been shipping that desktop. Oh, I'm sorry. 45 years. I'm not trying to convince you to reload your computer, but it is sometimes interesting to see if another implementation fixes trackpad issues. Because I can tell you by doing a lot of distro reviews, one of the things I now test is how it handles the trackpad, what features of the trackpad it lets you configure, like tap to click and speed and touch to scroll and stuff like that. All that's now a part of my review because the implementations are different enough that I consistently have to check for it. If you get bored, and the thing is it's low risk because you just have to, you can install Etcher if you want, which is a great tool to write ISO images to USB sticks and burn it and just boot off of a live USB stick and just use the mouse. And if you don't notice a difference, reboot and you're done. So it's a pretty easy test. Although don't do it because I hate it when people recommend try this thing, load this thing, install this thing. That's always the worst answer ever because you just want your existing work environment. So don't do it unless you get bored or just curious.
I assure you that I am very against trying new things.
Yeah, good for you. That's a good, healthy, long-term strategy. What could go wrong? All right. So speaking of people that are afraid to try new things, Steve Ballmer has been redefining history, my friend. He has been dumping on Bill big time. And before we go there, we've been together for a little bit. Let's mention our second sponsor today, Linux Academy. LinuxAcademy.com/coders is where you've got to go to let them know you support this show and want to keep us going. That's LinuxAcademy.com/coders. Then dig around and check it out. They've got a new 7-day free trial. This is a platform that helps you learn and grow with Linux. The kind of things that you really kind of have to learn to manage or build a system, like the real basics, but also the big stuff, like the services that sit on top of Linux, AWS kind of stuff, Azure kind of stuff, DevOps topics, management and infrastructure kind of things, even down to the nitty gritty. In fact, they have these nuggets or just deep dives into singular topics, which you got a couple of hours this week. Do that. That's nice. They also have availability planners where you can get a little more of a set courseware with goals depending on how much time you have. And then if you're really kind of heads down and want to get into a specific career task, they have these tracks that you can go take that'll give you like specific content and training for that. And they have lab servers that spin up on demand when you need them. You SSH in, and you get to work on a real server. And they can grade you as you work on that system. If you want to go get your certs, they have courseware specifically for that course and plan. And they have instructors which are actually humans. They're not like bots. They're not like a farmed out IRC room. It is actual human beings that can help you. They're involved with making the content too, so they're familiar with it. And they got public credentials now, so you can share your accomplishments. And a community that's full of Jupiter Broadcasting members. LinuxAcademy.com/coders. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Okay, so this I think I'm going to just play it. This is fair use to play this, and it's not too long. It's Steve Ballmer in an interview on Bloomberg. And in this, he basically pins Microsoft's failure to beat the iPhone on Bill Gates and says that Bill Gates was holding them back.
What was it like taking over from a founder CEO?
People like to focus in on Bill was CEO, you were CEO. This was kind of like my baby and Bill's baby, and we were growing it and nurturing it. He was kind of like the senior partner. I was the junior partner. If it's in the raising of children, I would say he was more, mom gets to decide more than dad, but,
Oh, he already going off the tracks.
I take great satisfaction in the things we accomplished. throughout the time, not just when I became CEO. When I became CEO, we had a very miserable year. Bill didn't know how to work for anybody, and I didn't know how to manage Bill. I'm not sure I ever learned the latter. Things lightened up some, and then I would say my life changed a lot in 2008 when Bill actually left the company.
How so?
At that, Bill had asked me, he said, look, I'm happy to help you in any way, but I don't want you to need me, so I can come and go. If you want me, great, but I have another life. And in a sense, I finally felt like, okay, we're not partners anymore. I have to take accountability. And I think I probably did some of my very best work at the company after Bill left, actually.
Really? Like what?
She sounds
Pushed us
surprised.
into Bing, sustained that investment. You know, that's really where we got into the cloud. We started what's now Office 365 in Azure after Bill left. You know, we pushed into the hardware business with Surface.
That's actually true.
Et cetera. And now Satya Nadella, my successor, is sort of taking things there to infinity and beyond, if you will.
How do you feel about being asked about your successes and your failures? What you're most proud of? What you're least proud of?
You know, at this stage, I'm almost 3 years out. It's ancient history. Did I, have a lot of success? Yeah. Are there some things I wish I'd done differently?
Yeah?
Of course.
Like what?
I started a company that had about $2.5 million of revenue and 30 people, and I left a company that had $22 billion in profit, and I feel like that net, pretty good success.
What's your relationship with Bill like today?
Yeah, we've kind of drifted apart. He's got his life, I sort of have mine. Microsoft was kind of the thing that really bound us. You know, we started off as friends, but then really got quite enmeshed around Microsoft, and since I've gone, we really have drifted a little bit.
He wasn't happy about when you left suddenly, or, what really happened?
Well, I mean, it was definitely not a simple thing for either one of us. I think that at the end of the day, there are probably two things. A little bit of a difference in opinion on the strategic direction of the company, which I think is a challenge. And then number two, he and I had kind of always had what I would call brotherly relationship in the good parts and the bad parts, and I just think towards the end that was a bit more difficult than not, particularly with the strategic direction change, and the stock price wasn't going anywhere, so the rest of the board felt pressure, despite the fact that profits were going up.
A little bitter there.
Kind of a combustible situation. And
does it ever bother you you don't get credit for that?
Sure and no. I mean, at the end of the day, I have the great sort of comfort of knowing what I did and feeling good about myself, and everything else doesn't really matter.
Where did you want to take the company? Where did he want to take the company?
I think there was a fundamental disagreement about how important it was to be in the hardware business. I had pushed Surface. The board had been a little reluctant in supporting it, and then things came to a climax around what to do about the phone business.
Satya Nadella was on stage recently where he said missing the mobile phone was one of the biggest mistakes in Microsoft's history. What would you have done differently?
Which was blaming Bill.
I would have moved.
That was blame. When he said that, that felt like a Ballmer. That's what I think. I think that's what led to this interview. I think this is the moment why Ballmer was willing to do this interview.
I have been a Ballmer defender not defender, but I really don't like the revision. So honestly, that interview that you labeled as Ballmer's revision.
Well, he's about to get to that part. So far, I pretty much agree.
Let me just interject here, right?
Yeah.
Before he goes off the rails. Nadella did not come in on Monday and launch three great products on Tuesday.
I know, you and I have both said that.
Ballmer, they just cut his balls off before he could get his stuff to market.
I'll play the clip. See, here's the thing, I think Ballmer got there late, and then he floundered. He didn't know what...
He fundamentally made a mistake. And his mistake was he didn't understand. And honestly, I think you and I might be making this mistake when we talk about the MacBook Pro. We don't understand that at the end of the day, it's not speeds and feeds. It's something more intangible, something more soft, right? The user experience of a product. And he saw the iPhone as an expensive toy. And he mocked it, right? He mocked the price openly. But he didn't get it that it was a sea change.
So I actually, with that, that's the perfect point. With that said, I think that's the lens to view the rest of this interview.
Moved into the hardware business faster and recognized that what we had in the PC, where there was a separation of chips, systems, and software, wasn't largely going to reproduce itself in the mobile world. I wish I'd thought about the model of subsidizing phones through the operators. You know, people like to point to this quote where I said iPhones will never sell. It was because the price of $600 or $700 was too high, and there was business model innovation by Apple to get it essentially built into the monthly cell phone bill. We should have been in the hardware business sooner in the phone case, and we were still suffering what I would call some of the effects of our Vista release of Windows, which sucked up a huge amount of resource for a much longer period of time than it should have because we stumbled over it. And when you have a lot of your best engineers sort of in a sense being non-productive for a while, it really takes a toll.
Would you have bought Nokia?
I certainly wanted to buy Nokia. The board at first disagreed with that and then came back and said the company should go ahead even though I had decided to leave. I think it was, if executed in a certain way, I think it made a lot of sense. A company chose to go another direction, and that's.
Yeah, you would have had to done it much earlier.
Do you think?
Yeah, I feel like, well, this is almost done.
I see the stock price flying sky high, and all you can say is that the market certainly agrees with the direction Satya's taking the company, and I'm super excited about that.
So he's nice at the end there, so I want to give him that because that was really professional to say. Because basically, Satya
is a gentleman, right? I mean, he's an old school West Coast business gentleman.
He does say it in a way where you can understand where he's a little bitter about it. But Satya, like he is right about Azure. The part I think he revisions on this is he sort of doesn't take responsibility for the Vista fumble. He doesn't take responsibility for not pushing the carriers into a new business model, as he puts it, to subsidize them. He just took a back seat on all of that stuff. And he did it at a time when they had a massive penetration in the market, so it was like the worst time to squander it. And that, I think, is all on him.
So I think the issue for Ballmer was, Microsoft had a great game during a technology cycle that was very enterprise and very business focused. And Apple was able to see a way to leverage some of the new technologies, of course, but also some of these other technologies, like mobile phones in particular. You have to remember, not so long ago, the mobile phone, the BlackBerry at the time, was the phone of the, from where I'm from, the Wall Street businessman, right? Not, I'm sure, whatever, Valley, Hotshot, whatever kind of Seattle businessman in your area.
Yeah, we use Windows CE devices and Palms.
Sure, Palms, Windows CEs. In New York, it was all Blackberries, but whatever.
Yeah,
right?
no, I had a long relationship with a BlackBerry. Two of them,
I had
actually.
a BlackBerry Curve, actually. So at some point, Apple realized we can democratize this technology. We can innovate the business model in terms of getting people to not realize they're paying $1,000 for a cell phone, right? Or $800, whatever it was. And we'll make a deal with Singular. Everybody forgets that Apple's deal, the iPhone would not have happened if Singular Wireless wasn't desperate and if AT&T.
Remember how they got unlimited data? Remember that? Remember iPhones came with unlimited data?
And AT&T, when they bought Singular, was like loath to honor that deal. Do you remember? I remember all of the business model conflicts when the iPhone first came out.
I have an old plan that I have kept around over the years just because it's unlimited. It was a very unique thing. The other thing that was sort of an area where Apple sort of executed, I think, much better than Ballmer did was when they bought what was it, PI Semiconductor? I can't remember the company's name. Where Apple realized the whole hardware, software, ship it together, make it one product. Now in an era of Surface Books and computers from Microsoft, the Pixel from Google, and the iPhone, which, what was the latest stat, makes 104% of the market
profit. Well, that is an anomaly because the Note 7, which was supposed to be its one-to-one competitor, ends up being a freaking hand grenade.
Right, but the most profitable phone in the industry is the one that's led by the company that pioneered the idea of one product, all one product. The software, the hardware, the engineering. And now that's where Microsoft is at, and that's where Google is at. And I think Ballmer tries to play like he was trying to get there. And I think that's some revisionist crap. I don't think
No,
Ballmer.
I don't know that I mean, he had to have been trying to get there, right?
No, I think Ballmer was a true believer in licensing. I think he saw value perhaps in having a Microsoft product, but I think he always saw revenue in licensing.
See, the impression I get of him is he was a believer in licensing, but he always, he wanted the Surface.
That's the impression you get from this video.
No, that's the impression I get. They could not have launched, right? I mean, the Surface came out when Ballmer was still, the big kahuna.
See, there was a lot of internal debate, I am led to believe, about even launching the Surface. And Ballmer was one of the ones that thought it was too risky and it would piss off their most valuable OEMs.
See, I have to say that I, first of all, fundamentally don't believe that licensing is a good business model. I think that if you have a vendor or a licensee or an OEM that gets a fixed revenue per unit on licensing your software, and this could even go for, people in the audience who want to write software and license it to people, they are incentivized to devalue and commoditize your software as much as possible.
Yeah, man.
Or they're going to commoditize their own hardware to try to boost their margins.
Well, that's so obvious to us now in almost 2017. But this man started with a company in the 80s, and like he said himself, took it from a $2 million company to a $22 billion company on the backs of software licensing. I mean, he was sitting.
Any new market, right? That's any new market, any new technology.
Right, but he is the king of his throne is built on top of licensing. He's literally he's sitting at the top of the largest software company in the world, all built on licensing revenue. He was all in, and to play now like he wanted to go all in on hardware, it would be, I think, is a revision. I think that is where he's sort of not lying, but trying to make his legacy perhaps a little tidier.
See, I did not read that at all, that he's all in on hardware. What I'm saying is that, and I see, it's funny. I think it's really funny that that's the criticism you have of his thing, because I think totally trying to whitewash the Vista debacle is really the thing we ought to be talking about, right? The tremendous failure in software planning that was Windows Vista. And let us not forget Longhorn ponies, right? Like, really, there has
the
never
public
been
shame they had to live with, and they had to, and then 8 sucked too. Let's be honest, 8 wasn't really well received either.
I mean, the Longhorn Vista thing's complicated because is Longhorn actually Vista? My feeling in it is no. That's actually a project that was just shot in the back of the head. And then parts of it were salvaged for Vista. Then they had 7, right, which was good. And then 8 was not as bad as people say it was, but
it was bad though, especially for their core business, which you just said earlier was enterprise. It was. They made it.
That's where he, and I will defend him to the end, Steven Sinofsky was right.
I'm impressed that he took a risk. I'll give you that. So here's what he said, though. Here's what I'm giving. You're right. I think, that's atrocious. But here's the thing that he said. Here's the quote. This is Ballmer. There was a fundamental disagreement about how important it was to be in the hardware business, Ballmer said. I had pushed Surface. The board had been a little too reluctant in supporting it, and then things came to a climax around what to do with the phone business. See, I think he was being sloppy with how to get in the hardware business, and he was just sort of floundering, and Nokia was originally his idea. He's like, well, let's get these guys, because everybody at the time said, wouldn't it be awesome if Nokia made an Android phone and shipped that? And that was like the peak Nokia hype, right. And they bought them. And I think he was just sort of being sloppy about it, and that's why the board was reluctant. But he plays it off as if he had this vision about the integrated software hardware product, and the board held him back.
Well, I think before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we should acknowledge that Microsoft's fastest growing revenue is in the services Azure sort of category, right? I forgot how I think they just call it services. It's like Office 365 in Azure.
Yeah, we did that because I started Bing services.
Yeah, which doesn't make money, but the things we've also thrown in there to hide Bing's losses too. Yay for creative accounting. Do you think it would have mattered? I mean, this is, to me, this is the fundamental question with the Ballmer era of Microsoft. Had he bought Nokia 6 months before he did, would we be carrying Nokia phones? Would Nokia be the platform getting the robust native TechCrunch-worthy developer apps? Although I have a lot to say about apps that get featured on TechCrunch, but we can talk about that.
I think it would have to be the Microsoft of today, with the hardware experience that they have now, with a platform.
You are falling right into the celebrity Satya Nadella.
No. Here's why I mean that is they actually have experience now on how to ship mobile hardware devices like the Surfaces. So they've actually done it for a couple of years. They have experience, and Windows 10 is liked a lot more than Windows was at the time he was at the helm. So you're going to potentially get more people willing to use it.
So their story is that in addition to Satya Nadella's leadership, which at this point probably matters, they also made an effort to hire designers and attract designers, right? That previously design had been second fiddle at Microsoft. Do you believe that? It sounds like that's what you're saying, that user experience designers, industrial designers, graphic designers, that they've somehow grown that capability in-house.
I think what I'm trying to communicate is the Microsoft at the time didn't value the things they value now. And what I mean by that is they couldn't build the right kind of products. They built shitty products when they built all-in-one stuff.
Okay, but it's the same people, man. When Microsoft wants to show that they care about something,
but the competitive atmosphere has forced them to up their game. No, really.
They still parade Scott Guthrie out there in a red sweater, and I think Scott Guthrie is great, but
no, I think
it's not like changing the CEO fires the next three layers of management down.
Think of it this way, Mike. You had to have seen the comments, either in podcasts or in Twitter, where people said, wow, I actually feel like I was more impressed by the Microsoft keynote yesterday than I was.
I made one of those comments.
Yes. My point is the Microsoft of today is building products that Microsoft at his time wasn't capable of creating.
No, wrong. The point is the Apple of today is so fucking lost that John Scully would be an improvement. Ooh, that sounded mean.
I think everyone's had to up their game. That's why Google now is selling the Pixel phone.
Who's upping their game? Who is upping their game?
I think
Who has
Microsoft
not gone down in the last 3 years.
Microsoft is shipping the most innovative hardware they've ever built.
They started from the lowest fucking point. Look at Apple and Google, who are winning. Google is, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. They'll give you a Chromecast and a little speaker and call it Google Home. And Tim Cook's over there ripping ports out like they murdered his family. Like he sees a USB 3 port and is like, "You mother, I'm gonna get you." Like, I don't understand how anybody could look at those. Let's just get rid of Google for a second. Let's look at Microsoft and Apple because those are the traditional competitors, and say, "My God, Microsoft's event was good." No, Microsoft's event was okay. Apple's was fucking terrible. So by comparison, of course, you feel that the Microsoft event was good. You are not going to pay $3,000+ for that Surface Studio.
No. You're
not going to do it.
No.
That knob is a stupid gimmick. You don't want it. It's still a bad idea. And by the way, the creatives that Microsoft still wants to try to get have a workflow in Mac OS that if Apple could get over the little jihad about ports and fucking thinness, would stay with them forever, right? I'll be honest with you, if I didn't before the MacBook Pro launched know it was going to suck, I would not have bought the Lemur. I would have waited. But because I knew it was going to suck, I bought the Lemur. So why you act as though Microsoft has somehow taken the competition and done well. That is a misleading and kind of really destructive and dishonest way to.
I don't see that at all.
If Apple released a proper fucking studio computer or mobile workstation, no one would be covering the Microsoft event except for Paul Thurrott, and he'd be crying because it wouldn't be as good. He'd be making up reasons that the Apple one's worse.
You know, I actually just last night watched a video from Linus Tech Tips where they were called down to Redmond and they toured the area where they've been building products. And it's interesting to see Microsoft evolve and invest in actually creating more resources on site at Redmond to build things and build models as they're engineering things. I think you are underplaying how hard they worked and how they prioritized things about this new iMac that they released. I think...
I'm sorry, you mean the Surface Studio?
No, I mean the Microsoft iMac. I think you actually might not be informed on how hard they worked, how the company.
It is not a viable product.
I know, I agree, but I'm saying if the company, but here's what you asked me. I'm going back to what you asked me. If the company that made the Microsoft iMac today were making a complete phone back in the days when Nokia was still a standalone company, I still don't really think maybe they could have done it.
I don't even know what you're talking about. If Steve Wozniak ran Apple, I'd have a USB port.
Honey bunny, you're the one that asked me if Ballmer was in office, if they could have released an all-in-one phone back then, could they have been successful? If they could have gotten Nokia 6 months earlier?
That's not what I asked you. I asked you if they had bought Nokia 6 months earlier, do you think it would have made a difference?
This is what I'm answering.
I didn't say that they would design the phone. Okay. I see where you misunderstood me. My win scenario for them under Ballmer was they buy Nokia and they shut up and let Nokia do its thing.
Oh, and keep it its own separate brand, kind of like Amazon and Zappos.
Right, exactly. Let them do their thing, but make sure they never release an Android phone. Like a totally defensive maneuver. Not, for the love of God, don't let them touch it. Jeez, I never.
What about a Nokia phone that runs Android with a Microsoft launcher, all the Microsoft services, all the Microsoft apps? It's like what they kind of did with Cyanogen, only on a Nokia device that's well built.
I mean, that would be great, but what about an iPhone running Android 7, right? That'd be nice too.
No, Android's horrible.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's horrible. I'm sorry. I've got a few Android devices, so I feel like I can speak with some authority.
I've been doing Android dev all weekend, and I can tell you that Android is in fact horrible.
Here's what We All Hall suggests for you and I. Just use a damn Hackintosh. He says, use it. Just use it, Chris. If you find it to be the best tool for the job, don't second guess. Just go. It's the right option, and I'm looking forward to hearing the review. Would you consider it? Like, say you could get yourself a modern, a laptop from a vendor that had a trackpad you liked or something. Like, say you could get to the right laptop combination. Would you consider putting Mac OS on there if it could work? Use a Hackintosh for your tools?
No. My issue with the Lemur is not the OS. In fact, that's the high point. My issue is the hardware itself, the trackpad.
I'm considering it. Here's my
you're running
issue.
A lot more risk on a laptop too. You're better off doing a tower, but
totally, yeah. Especially on a newer laptop that has more modern components. But here's why I don't think it's going to be successful, because if there's anything that can break a Hackintosh, it's Final Cut. Or anything that can break on a Hackintosh, it's Final Cut.
No, it's the Wi-Fi driver, actually.
Well, that too, yeah. But Final Cut really, it's constantly it needs all of the features of the GPU to be right. So the driver's got to be rock solid there.
Doesn't it use GCD, or am I living in Snow Leopard days still?
I don't know. Whatever it uses, it can use the hell out of your cores. So if I would imagine it's probably one of their poster childs of GCD. Also, it's updated via the App Store, so that's all got to be solid. And updates are tied to the latest release of the OS, so that's also got to be solid. Those individual, and the fact that I want it on a fast laptop that can also be a kick-ass Linux box. Those things make it not an awesome.
That doesn't seem like a good idea. Should we cut into episode 2 though, my love? Because
all right. Well, yes. We'll wrap this up. We'll mark this the official right here wrap up point of episode 230. As Mike hinted, we're going to record a double. Boom. So we won't be live next week because we're recording it right now. I'll be on the road, and Mike's. I don't know. I think he's got like a hit job or something he's doing. Maybe you'll find out on Twitter.
I'm actually going to be the new CFO of Microsoft. I'm auditing the shit out of the Office division.
Tell someone where to find you on the lines if they want.
@Jumanuko on Twitter.
All right. And you can follow the networks on the lines if you want over at Jupiter Signal. And we are normally live on Mondays. Get the time at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Thanks for being here, and visit us at coderradio.reddit.com throughout the week.